Welcome to Feagan and Finch, the podcast where we talk all things football. I'm Alex Finch.
And I'm Ryan Feagan. Let's talk football.
So this week we're continuing that transfer theme, talking about the biggest flops across the last 25 years in Europe. So there's been some big flops in that time, some unjustified criticism, probably an unjustified tagging as a flop for some of the players who might not have been. It seems a lot of the time the media probably dictate it with those headlines. They tag this person as a flop. And it's only really the big names and the big money transfers which sort of get that label and have that media tag. So I think they're going to be the ones, those big names, we'll be talking about. As to be a true flop, I think you've got to have a name to begin with. You've got to have expectations going in to a club.
Yep.
Otherwise, how
Without
can you
doubt.
flop if you have no expectations? You ever see like a youngster coming through at 17 and say, "Oh, what a flop he is! He didn't do anything." It's really just transfers coming in, the big money transfers where you see like 30, 40 million pound transfer coming in. If a player doesn't perform, they'll get labelled a flop. So yeah, we'll talk through all those flops, and then I think we're going to decide upon, as always, the biggest flop in recent history. So we'll name it today. So stay to the end. And Ryan, as always, you can kick us off with a nice little number.
Oh, right. I was going to kick us off with what I believe is to be the biggest transfer flop of all time, but I will save that for later on. I'm going to say, and it's actually really pains me to say because he is my all-time favourite player. I'm going to say Kaká's transfer to Real Madrid as one of the biggest flops.
Definitely.
This was absolutely gutting for me. I wanted him so bad at Chelsea. I remember the headlines. It was January 2009. The Man City had a £100 million bid rejected for him. So I thought, okay, right. Well, if they're going to reject that sort of money, then he's never going to go anywhere other than AC Milan, because 100 million back them days was a lot of money. Like a lot, wasn't it, Finch? You never saw any player move for that sort of money. If it was
Ronaldo went
other than
for 80
Ronaldo,
million.
yeah.
And that was less. And Ronaldo was the player of the year, 2008.
Yeah, exactly. But when in 2011 he decided to move to Real Madrid for I think it was 67 million euros, which amounts to sort of say 56 million English pounds. I was like, right, okay, that's also gutting because Chelsea could have gone in for him. We didn't, or Man City could have gone in for him. So at least I could see him in the Premier League. Didn't work out. So I thought, okay, well, I'm still going to cheer him on because it's a favourite player. Let's see what he can do with one of the biggest clubs in the world. And he just did not do anything. Obviously, he had a lot of injuries, but even when he was playing, he didn't really show the sort of flair, the pace, the skill that he did at AC Milan. He was not a game changer for Real Madrid whatsoever. He was really he was outshined by Ozil, Ronaldo, Benzema. It just did not. It wasn't the right fit for him being at Real Madrid, and it was so upsetting to see. He went back to AC Milan, but when he went back there, he wasn't the player he was before he left. So I really do believe that transfer ruined him as a player. Still a legend, in my opinion. Still a fantastic player, one of the all-time greats of the game. But that transfer to Real Madrid, man, it really stumbled his career.
Yeah, because that 2009 was the year they bought Ronaldo, Benzema, Alonso. They went full out that summer, and then the Kaká transfer was the one which just didn't work. And I guess he came before Ronaldo, and everyone thought he'd just be the star. And then Ronaldo came later that summer, and he was completely outshone by him. And I think he got overall 23 goals in 83 or 85 La Liga appearances, which seems on paper not too bad for a midfielder. But for a midfielder who was one of the best of his generation, 2007 World Player of the Year, that's not good enough. And that is that is flop worthy material because it's just well below the standards he had at Milan, because he was getting 15, 20 goals a season at Milan.
He won the Ballon d'Or.
That was incredible.
Finch.
Yeah, he won the Ballon d'Or.
Went to Madrid. Last player to win it since Messi and Ronaldo. Well, and Modric. Also, I do apologise. I said it was 2011. It was actually 2009, as you corrected me, Finch. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all good.
The reason why I said
Happy to.
2011 was because he was on the cover for FIFA 11. Strange little fact.
Nice fact of the day, fact of the podcast.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah,
That's it.
I think the reason it's a flop is just because he literally was the best player in the world, bar Ronaldo probably that year, and the best player in the world the previous year. So when he went to Madrid, everyone would think, okay, it's perfect fit. He'll now have a platform to be the best player in the world again. But it just didn't work out. He never got to those standards of the best player in the world. Never got to the standards of Messi and Ronaldo again. It was quite sad to see that happen. But I guess the annoying thing for Brazilians more generally, they always seem to do that. It's not as a trend with Kaká. Ronaldinho reached the peak when he went to Milan. He was never the same player when he left Barcelona. The larger than life Ronaldo, R9, he was more. It was more down to injury with him. That's why he was never the same player. But a lot of the Brazilians you see, they just reach their peaks at like 27, 28 and just never kick on after
it. Fizzle out. Yeah, they fizzle out.
So
they never really ever go out on a high, do they? They never seem to go out on a high.
Yeah, it was sad to see that never really worked out with Kaká. Then he obviously went back to Milan. It was just a disappointing return of what happened.
Oh, without doubt.
He's one of the most liked players in the world as well. That was the problem. And everyone wanted him to do well. But I think as well, thinking about it now, the big thing for him at Madrid, one of the reasons he probably didn't have the chance to get to levels to what he did at Milan, is because Milan he was the main man for everything. And maybe he's going to probably the chances in 2009, 2010, but in 2010 season, remember Ozil came in and he was Mourinho's main man, justified because he was unreal for Madrid at that time. They won the league. He was Mourinho's. Yeah, he got in the position Kaká probably wanted in that 2010, 2011, 11, 12, and I think 12, 13 as well. I think the final 3 years of Kaká at Madrid, that was the final 2 years, 3 years. He wasn't playing his preferred position because Ozil had it. And Ozil was playing so well, Kaká couldn't really get the shirt back off him. So I think that had a major impact.
Yeah, definitely. He was, in a team of Galacticos in a way. Whereas he had a fantastic team around him at AC Milan. But by the time it was for him to leave AC Milan, he became that star player, as the players got older around him. Whereas at Real Madrid, you have all this up and coming talent. Even Ronaldo, Ronaldo was what, 25 at that time?
23 when he came to.
Well, there you go, 23.
Yeah.
So, I mean, playing with Ozil, he was like, what, 25, 26. Benzema. There was so much talent in that team, man. So much talent.
And it's just Ozil played in his preferred position. His last 3 years, he played most of the time his preferred position. The first season didn't perform. So Ozil given the opportunity when Mourinho came in after that 2010 World Cup and just took the position, really. So I think Kaká was just playing that position most of the time. Never really got back into that team because Ozil was there. I think Ozil left the same summer that Kaká left, actually, weirdly enough. He went to Arsenal that same summer, 2013.
That's weird. 2013.
We're talking about another Milan player. I think we've got to talk about this one player. 30 million transfer at the time.
Here we go. I knew it was coming.
£30 million transfer.
Yep.
Went from AC Milan to Chelsea. Was known as potentially the best striker in the world at that point. Definitely top 5. Right, I'd probably say best striker in the world. Had 172 goals in 296 appearances. Won the Champions League. Won Serie A. Won it all at Milan. He was known as scoring over 20 goals most of those years. It was absolutely unreal. Chelsea bought him thinking nothing could go wrong. Of course, I'm talking about Andrei Shevchenko. I remember 30 million back then. It was 2006, wasn't it? 2006. That was a huge
record,
sum.
wasn't it? The British record.
The British record.
And it was a long time.
I remember thinking that is absolutely. I think it was 30.8 million. I was thinking that was absolutely unreal. That sum. It's a huge sum of money to buy a player. British record. And then he came to Chelsea and just never looked like a good striker. He never looked like a player he was at Milan. And obviously he got 9 goals and 48 appearances. And that's an absolutely atrocious return. Considering he, nowadays, think about it, if you had the equivalent player now, an equivalent fee, that would probably be 100 million.
Oh, easy.
At 30 million,
Easy.
considering that was a British record then, we're probably talking 100
One of the
million
best
now.
players, one of the best strikers in the world. He'd easily be 100 million plus.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
100%. And he just didn't, he never seemed like he was a great player over at Chelsea. He just seemed a shadow of his former self. That was the weird thing. You never even seen glimpses of his greatness, really. He just seemed a complete different player. And I've read a lot of stuff about him since, and a lot of people say his mentality was never the same after that 2005 final against Liverpool. And there's misses he had. Obviously, he had that crucial miss in the penalty shootout. We had other misses in the game, and a lot of people are saying, a lot of people, these are the theories people are talking about, that he's never really got over those misses. He did have an all right season the following year. I think he got 17 goals, but he didn't hit the same levels he did previously. So maybe that had a factor that when Chelsea got him, he maybe wasn't the player Chelsea thought they'd buy him. I'm not completely sure, because even after Chelsea, he wasn't great. But I was saying that he's always performed for Ukraine. I think even at 2006 World Cup, he led them to the quarterfinals. So you're thinking, after that, leading Ukraine to the best ever finish at a World Cup, getting a few goals in that World Cup, what can go wrong for Chelsea? But it seemed like everything went wrong. And that haunted number 9 shirt for Chelsea, it just didn't work out.
Oh mate, it was it was a bit of a nightmare transfer, that one. But luckily for us at the time, he wasn't our main striker. We still had Didier Drogba banging in the goals, securing us Champions League, Premier League titles, etc., etc. But it was one of them transfers where I wanted it to work out so well, you know. Because when you think of it, Chelsea have had some absolutely world-class strikers: Hernan Crespo, Hasselbank, Anelka, Shevchenko, but
Costa.
Diego Costa. But they never seem Costa and Crespo and Anelka, actually, I'd say, are an exception.
Maybe not Anelka a little bit, but he wasn't. He obviously got top goal scorer, about 19 goals, but he never really set the world alight. He had probably most known for that Champions League miss.
Yeah. But then again, he did have a really good partnership with Drogba when we won the league. He had that incredible. That's the thing. These strikers, they all played with Didier Drogba, all of them.
Yeah.
And he's a tough guy to compete against at the end of the day.
But I think they bought him to play alongside Drogba.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at that point, we were talking about every team having two players up front. It was always 2 players up front, and you combine with those 2 strikers. That was the going theme. That was the trend. Teams were having 2 players up front. So Chelsea were thinking, okay, got Drogba, big strong player. We'll get someone to play off him, pacey striker, who's one of the best finishers in the world, Andrei Shevchenko. Let's go for the best of the best. It just didn't work out.
Did not work out at all. But like I say, it did work out with Anelka. So I wouldn't consider Anelka a flop. I would not consider Anelka a flop.
Yeah, probably not a flop. But
one of the better Chelsea strikers that we've had in the last 15 years.
I guess he didn't set the world alight though, I guess, did he?
No.
And talking of Anelka, actually, a lot of people say he was a flop. Not when he went to Chelsea, but when he went to Real Madrid. So he went to Real Madrid for 23 million back in the day, 1999. Very, very young. After a great season at Arsenal, got 17 goals in 1998-99 season. Went to Real Madrid, didn't do anything there. Had 19 appearances in the league, 2 goals. Very, very young. So still had the whole career ahead of him. But he just didn't. He didn't really get a chance. Didn't play well when he did play. And ultimately, a year later, went to PSG for basically the same fee. So it's hard to call him a flop because he only had 1 year. But that's what a lot of people say. He wasn't actually on my list, but I think it's worth bringing up. But going back to Shevchenko, I think he's got to be up there at the end in terms of the biggest flops, just because at the time how big a transfer it was, and he just never did anything. That was the problem.
No.
Like you say players like Anelka, at least he did get like one season where he had 19 goals. You know, like Crespo, he's got a fair few goals. Shevchenko just didn't do anything. Got a couple of goals.
Absolutely nothing.
Was it 9 goals in total, something like that? It's just not good
enough.
A
banging goal against Spurs, but that's really it. That's his Chelsea career highlights, to be honest with
you. But considering those 3 years at Chelsea, he got less goals than probably some of the seasons he did at Milan in 1 year.
exactly.
And even after he left Chelsea, he was never the same. Went to Milan, didn't do anything on loan. So yeah,
Confidence was just rocked, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's going to be a theme in this of strikers. I'm going to bring one more striker up. I think it's just worth a quick mention. And he might actually lead to a mention of a different striker because of this January transfer window, crazy transfer window back in 2011. That is what you call a transfer deadline day. It was incredible. Probably the best transfer deadline day I've ever seen. So Liverpool, they're thinking, we got this, we got 50 million. I'm not going to name the player they got 50 million from because we might want to talk about him because he's one of those players I think is probably, and you'll definitely agree with this, probably unfairly labelled as a flop.
Yeah, well, without doubt. I
think we'll talk about him.
At all.
Yeah. I think it's worth talking about after we talk about this one because they're linked so much. So Liverpool had $50 million, £50 million even. It would have had more dollars worth more than pounds. We all know that. So 50 million, who can we spend? They didn't seem like they had a plan. So they spent 35 million on Andy Carroll. Andy Carroll at the time was actually highly rated. He had a real good half season at Newcastle. Seemed like the world was there for him to take. So Liverpool bought for 35 million. He wasn't worth it. He had a good half season. He wasn't worth 35 million. Mainly, they paid that because Newcastle just didn't want to sell. So got him for 35 million. Kenny Dalglish thought that's good business, but it turned out to be absolutely awful. He didn't do anything at Liverpool, and he just didn't look like a player worthy of carrying Liverpool's front line at all. And he obviously went on and had an awful injury record, was awful. Went on and Liverpool did well actually to sell him to West Ham for 15 million. And he did all right. They had a good Premier League career, but for 35 million, he was never in that bracket.
No.
Don't know what you think of him.
Never ever in that bracket. He had an all right run with Newcastle, but I think like the English hype, as it normally does in the Premier League, it gets to the media, it gets the clubs, you know. He was only young. You got to think, Andy Carroll's 23, 24, 22, something like that, sort of.
Yeah. Something like that at the time.
He was never ever going to fulfill that 35 million price tag, ever.
No.
If it was 20 million, you'd think, yeah, okay. Considering they got Luis Suarez for like 23 million.
That puts it in context how much it was at that time. That puts it into real context.
Yeah. Absolutely madness, the fee for Carroll, and he was never going to do that. Never, ever. He was never going to pay it all back to Liverpool. I think they actually, they lost quite a bit of money on him as well, didn't they?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking they lost 20 million on him, but they did quite well to get 15 million. Because you look at the stats, they're generally quite bad. 2010, 2011, so he came in that half year, 7 appearances, 2 goals, awful return. The following year, played nearly every game. Liverpool, you can't say didn't give him a chance. He had 35 appearances in the league, 4 goals. That is a terrible return as a striker.
Yeah, that's great.
And then at that point, Liverpool thought we'll cut our losses, which ended up being a good decision. Went on loan to West Ham. They bought him permanently for 15 million. Had a few good years, but never got over 10 goals for West Ham. That says something. It's definitely not a 35 million pound player at all. No. And I think he's got to be up there as well for the biggest flops at that time, just because the money you sort of see how it happened, why they ended up paying 35 million, because they had all this money available after X players transfer and thought they had to replace. They were thinking, right, we have to replace that player, even though they had Suarez, and Suarez could have done it all by himself. He ended up doing it all by himself until Sturridge came along.
That's what I was about to say. That was a great bit of business for Liverpool to do, sell Carroll and bring in Daniel Sturridge.
Yeah, but that chance just never worked out. And you think about it, if Liverpool did sell the player we're going to talk about next earlier in that window, would they have then bought Carroll? Would they have paid that money? I don't think so. I don't think that Carroll was probably their first option. I don't think if they had more time in their hands, they would have. Yeah, that was the definition of a panic buy. You type in panic buy on Wikipedia, that will come up because that is the example. That's what it is. I think now, Ryan, it's your time to talk about a player who's labelled a flop by so many people. But if you look at his stats, dig a bit deeper, probably isn't a flop.
I'm going to say Fernando Torres is the player we're talking about here. That dramatic deadline day back in 2011 Chelsea are after Fernando Torres. Liverpool said no. Chelsea offered 50 million. Liverpool said hell yeah. Took the money, went to Newcastle and picked up Andy Carroll, 35.
Phoned up Mike Ashley, didn't they? Little phone call.
They phoned up Mike Ashley and said, there you go, we'll pay 35 million for Andy Carroll. Mike Ashley muted the call, laughed his head off for 20 minutes, and then said, yeah, go for it. And that was the January 2011 deadline day. But what we're about to talk about now is Fernando Torres. He is labelled very much a flop. Obviously, he's got a huge price tag. I don't. It's a tough one because I personally do not think he was a flop. This guy was so essential in our Champions League run, our Europa League run. He was amazing in them competitions. He was exactly what Chelsea needed, especially after Drogba left the next season. He basically carried us in that Europa League run, along with Hazard and Mata. He was fantastic. You know, he won it all, other than the Premier League. He's won everything for Chelsea, other than the Premier League. He won nothing at Liverpool, nothing at all. So he's basically paid his transfer fee back in the prize money that you get for winning the competitions that he's won. It's you know, scoring vital goals. Obviously, his not winner. I mean, people get twisted. He didn't actually get us through to the Champions League final because Ramirez's goal was already taking us there, but he secured it. He made sure
confirmed it.
We got there. Yeah, he confirmed it basically. But in the Champions League final, he won us that corner after our heads had dropped in the 88th minute after Muller had just scored that goal, which everyone thought would be the winner. Fernando Torres cracked on. He pushed on into the corner, got the corner that Juan Mata took that led to Didier Drogba scoring the equaliser that took us to extra time. That's what I mean by how important this guy is to our history. Fernando Torres didn't score a lot of goals. He scored about 20 goals for Chelsea in his time, probably more.
A few more than that, yeah. He actually ended up scoring 45 goals in total. 170,
45 goals.
172 appearances, 45 goals. So not an amazing return.
A lot of their appearances will be sub appearances.
Yeah, but you're saying like important goals, important moments. He also, you said the Europa League run, he scored in the final.
Exactly, he scored in the final.
Win, and he scored in the final.
Yeah, that's what I mean, Finch. He was a very essential player for us at that time. A huge player. It was a guy that we needed. And would I say he was worth 50 million? Probably not. I'd say he was worth around that, considering all that he's done for us.
Yeah, I guess I
consider him a big one.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the thing when people label him a flop. The reason they do is because they think, did he warrant the £50 million? He probably didn't. And the form beforehand. If he came on as a player, which maybe had a good career, was scoring like 10 to 15 goals per season in the Premier League, and was solid, he wouldn't have been even talked about as a flop. Would have been talked about as having a good career at Chelsea. But because he came in at such great levels, he was being considered for the Ballon d'Or. I think he got the FIFA World Player of the Year. He came third place in that in 2008, and he was absolutely phenomenal for Spain, winning everything for them. Obviously, Euro 2008 got that winning goal. But that's the kind of levels he was at. He was probably the best striker in the world at one point for Liverpool. And when he came to Chelsea, that's probably why people thought he's a flop, because they compared his Liverpool form to his Chelsea form. Where probably, if you didn't compare them, then you would still think he had a good career at Chelsea. But if you compare the form, then he probably was a flop, because if you look at the expectations of where they thought he'd be in being the best striker in the Premier League again, because he was the best striker in the Premier League at that point, then you can probably label him a flop. But the reason I think, like you said, he's unfairly labelled a flop is because he did actually have a good career at Chelsea. It depends how you define flop. If you define flop, like we were talking about before, like players like Carroll, he didn't do anything for those clubs.
No, done nothing at all. Didn't win him anything, done nothing at all.
Didn't do anything. Shevchenko didn't do anything at all for Chelsea either. But Torres, the difference is he might not have warranted the £50 million. He might not have done as well as he did at Liverpool, but he still had a good career there. So I don't think you can really call him a flop, because his stats aren't atrocious. And like even that season you talk about, the Europa League season, 64 appearances in total, 22 goals in total, which isn't a goal and less than a goal in every 3 games, let's say, which isn't atrocious. And some of the goals that year in that Europa League run. He, like you said, he carried them. He got a goal in the final, got a fair few goals in the run. So I think he is unfairly labelled that, and he sort of carried that on his shoulders for a long time. I think that Europa League run did do him the world of good. And I do think as well, alongside playing for Chelsea, he did play well for Spain after that time at Liverpool, because people said, oh, he's just never the same player. But I think he got Euro 2012 Golden Boot, you know. Or at least joint Golden Boot. I think he shared it with a few players.
He was also a fantastic player at that at the Confederations Cup in 2013.
He got the Golden Boot at that as well.
Yeah, I believe Spain won that, didn't they? Was it Brazil who won that?
I think Brazil might have won that, but he still got the Golden Boot.
Exactly, he was still a fantastic performer.
Yeah, which is
so it's not
very,
like,
very
it's
good.
Not like Chelsea affected his confidence that much.
I think you got to more compare Torres, because he had to R9. Because people could compare him like as if he was the same player at Liverpool to Chelsea, but he wasn't, because he had a big injury. I think the end of the 2009-10 season. I think his first 2.5 years Liverpool, best striker in the league, potentially best striker in the world, and then he had a little injury which turned to be a bit bigger than people sort of made out, and that really didn't do wonders for his pace, and he wasn't really the same. He was still an amazing player, but wasn't the same player. After that, had a good return in that first half of the season before he went to Chelsea in January. So still got 9 goals and 20 odd appearances. Still good, but he didn't hit the heights he was doing previously. So he probably wasn't the same player. Maybe it was a bit like R9 when he was at, let's say, Barcelona. Absolutely unreal, 98 World Cup, and then obviously he got a massive injury. And that ruled him out for a year, or just over a year, and came back, was unreal at 2002 World Cup. Went to Madrid, still had a good career, but wasn't the same player he was back when he was at Barcelona. Didn't have that pace, electrifying movement. Still a great player, but wasn't the same. And people sort of accepted that because the injury. But people haven't really accepted Torres in having an injury, and that's the reason why he wasn't the same player when he went to Chelsea. So didn't accept that he wasn't going to be on that same level, which I think is the mistake people make. They just don't accept that they're two different careers. One at Liverpool, pre-injury, bit more pace, a different kind of player. One at Chelsea. If you separate them as different careers, like people did with Ronaldo, then you would think he actually had quite a good career at Chelsea.
There was an interview that came out during lockdown. Actually, it was I can't remember who it was. I think it was Richard Keys. It wasn't Richard Keys. It was one of the Sky Sports interviews. They were chatting to Jamie Carragher about Torres' move to Chelsea, about how they found out. They found out on the last day that it was all going to be confirmed, and the players actually, they wasn't too fussed about it because they knew they didn't have the same Torres what the one they had before injury was. He come back and he hadn't scored all season, and then they played Chelsea and he gets 2 goals against them. But that was it. He didn't do nothing else for Liverpool after that. He done nothing. He scored them 2 goals all season for Liverpool against Chelsea, which I guess sort of secured his transfer to Chelsea. Chelsea saw that and thought, we need this guy. But Liverpool knew what was going on. They saw that he was not the same player he was, 2 to 3 years back when he first joined the Premier League. So I wouldn't say Liverpool didn't miss him at all, really.
No. Well, to be fair, I would say they were quite close to getting to the title when he was there because of that Gerrard and Torres relationship. But during Torres' sort of latter years at Liverpool, last year and a half, they already let go Mastron, they already let go Alonso, so they weren't. Yeah. They were in like transition state. So yeah, I would completely agree. The problem with him as well is that it wasn't just any kind of injury. It was a knee injury. He had to have knee surgery. I just think that injury is really underappreciated. It was like people accept R9's injury because he was out of the game for like a year and a half, and it was absolutely atrocious, nearly 2 years, and you could see the difference between him before injury, him after injury, a lot bigger after injury. Probably didn't take off weight as easily, and he just wasn't as pacey. It was probably hard to see with Torres after injury, and it wasn't as long, but it was still a significant time period. Nearly a year. I think it was 7 or 8 months, but it coincided with a lot of the summer. So I think that's probably the reason people don't appreciate the injury. So they just think he went from Liverpool being the best visibility to Chelsea straight off. Whereas if you take into account that injury, you've got to consider it as a different career. If you do that, then you can't consider him a flop, in my opinion.
No,
Even then, after Chelsea, he still had a good career at Atletico Madrid. Got a fair few goals there.
Exactly, Finch. He's still done it elsewhere. Chelsea didn't rock his confidence like they did with Shevchenko and like with Real Madrid done with Kaka. He still went there and did other stuff.
Yeah. So Torres,
I don't
across the amount.
I do not. Yeah, he was not a flop. Not a flop.
Not a flop.
No.
So next player, who do you want to go for?
Oh, I can tell you someone who is a flop.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a theme with Chelsea strikers.
Oh God, another Chelsea striker.
The year 2017, we've just won the league. We had one of the best strikers in the league, in Diego Costa. And it comes out on Twitter, it goes absolutely mental on Twitter. Diego Costa's trending, Conte's trending. Antonio Conte has texted Diego Costa that he's no longer in his plans for next year and that he needs to find another club. What the hell? Yeah, what the hell? That's our best striker. Our best striker since Drogba. Obviously, no offense to Fernando Torres. He was absolutely fantastic for us. But like I said before, he didn't live up to the price tag, but still not a flop. Diego Costa, 32 million, definitely lived up to the price tag. Absolutely incredible for us. Won us 2 league titles. Unreal. Best striker we've had since Didier Drogba. And Antonio Conte comes in, wins us the league. We have this formidable team, this amazing concept, 3 at the back, 2 wing backs, fantastic holding midfielders, and a credible attack. And he wants to absolutely disrupt this by getting rid of our star striker. And he does this over text. Who does that? One of the best managers in the world, and you do that to one of our best strikers. I do not understand the logic there. That would have completely disrupted the dressing room for a start, and as you know, it did during the season, Conte's final season. And then to replace him, you bring in Alvaro Morata, who didn't really prove himself at anywhere, to be honest with you, let's be honest. Had an alright stint at Juventus, did okay at Real Madrid, but he never really done anything, Finch, let's be honest. He never really done anything anywhere. But I thought, you know what, let's give him a chance. It was like, what, 50 million for Morata? So I thought, right, okay, well.
Yeah, 60 million.
Maybe more. Yeah, I think it was like 50 million, yeah. So he comes in, and in his first game, we lose to Burnley. And I'm thinking, oh, God. But Morata scores 2 goals. No, he scores a goal and he sets up a goal. I'm thinking, right, okay, well, that's a bit of a, a light on a bad day. Then he scores again in his next match, and then he scores a hat trick against Stoke. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, we've got something golden here, absolutely amazing. We've sold Diego Costa, who was 4 or 5 years older than Morata. Morata's quicker, more skillful, and better in the air. So we may have something going on that's really, really amazing. Conte could be an absolute genius. Well, it didn't turn out very well. Morata was the worst finisher I have ever seen in a Chelsea shirt, or in the Premier League, that is. He missed so many big chances for us. He missed over, I'd say, at least 15 big chances in that season where we finished 3rd, or I think it was 3rd or 4th. It was, Finch, I don't even know. I don't have any more words to describe this man. He was ridiculously bad. Ridiculously bad.
It's just how many chances he missed.
Finch, I remember it was a Burnley game. I think it was the Arsenal game. He had 3 one-on-ones and he missed them all. Missed every single one of them. And the miss against Burnley is the miss of the one of the misses, the worst misses I've ever seen. Miss of the season. Even I could have scored it. The fact that Atletico Madrid are paying us the full price tag that we paid for Morata is a godsend, because clearly he's more suited to the Spanish league than what he was to the Premier League. He was. So I think something happened. To be fair to Morata, something did happen in his personal life. Well, I think one of his closest friends died. That really rocked his confidence. Apparently, he had a big back injury. But still, I'm going to have to label him a flop. I'm going to have to, because he is, and he was, one of the worst strikers that Chelsea ever bought. Considering the price tag we paid for him. We paid 60 million for him. Yeah, had we paid 20 million for him, it would have been like, right, okay, I'll give you a free pass. You were shit, but you only cost 20 million, made good profit on you. But you were our main striker, 50 million, and you done nothing whatsoever, other than a hat trick away at Stoke. God damn, that hat trick away at Stoke really set me up for like, oh my God, this could be the next big thing.
It was just the money with Morata, 60 million. And that summer, I remember the whole summer, people were going, Morata's going to go United, Lukaku, Chelsea. And then they somehow ended up going different directions. And Lukaku he probably didn't work out the best for him, but he still had a good return and did make a real good impact at United. 27 goals and 51 appearances in that first year.
Yeah.
And his impact was clear there. Whereas Morata just didn't seem to make an impact. He scored a few goals, wasn't as bad as, say, Andy Carroll. He did score some goals, but just didn't make the impact for that kind of fee for 60 million. And I just thought, okay, there's no chance Chelsea are going to get their money back for that. And I have no clue how Atletico agreed to be paying 60 million or 50 million, whatever the fee is they're paying. I find it absolutely crazy. Chelsea must have something on them, because that is
mate, I have
incredible.
No idea how we've done this. How we've managed to rob Atletico Madrid of this sort of money. It's actually crazy. But then again, we did pay 32 million for Diego Costa, so we have a habit of doing this to Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, I think it's maybe you might have lost maximum 10 million, let's say, but you probably haven't, because I think the loan fee was like 6 million for him to go to Atletico. Then I think they're paying 50 million now. So if you ended up paying 60 million, maybe the worst case scenario, you've lost 4 million, which is really not that bad, considering like the level he was at Chelsea, which compared to Costa, it's day and night. Costa was absolute beast. He led Chelsea to titles, and
exactly
without Costa, you wouldn't have got those titles. So he grabbed the title, grabbed the league by the scruff of his neck, took it to defenders, was absolutely made for the Premier League. Morata just wasn't made for it. It seemed like he had good dribbling at first, but
exactly.
He was just so weak. His finishing was awful. Just couldn't finish.
Yep.
At all.
No.
And he had some. I mean, the first 2 games, his dribbling looked unreal, and he had a couple of good finishes. But as the season went on, his dribbling might have been there.
He completely sold me on that first 10 games. He completely sold me, and then the rest of the 28 games happened, and he was just awful.
Definitely. And
absolutely, I think let's hope Timo Werner's not like that.
Yeah, I think Werner's just a lot more suited to the system. I think probably in the past, Chelsea strikers bought strikers which weren't probably as suited. You probably bought them by the names and that kind of thing, but Werner, I think, is just suited to Lampard's system. That's why I think a lot of clubs now are really doing their research and thinking, is this player suited to my system? I think he is. But one player which I do think was bought from his name as well, like Shevchenko at that time, probably like Morata was bought probably a bit of his name as well, because of the spells at Madrid and Juve, is a player who actually probably flopped twice at clubs in England. One club involving Chelsea as well. So that's Johan Sebastian Veron. So we had that 2001 and 2001 season. And Veron went from Lazio to United for a huge fee, 28 million. The most expensive
that was a British record,
English transfer. Yeah, the most expensive English transfer at that time. So that shows how big that was. That's 2001, so there's 5 years in between that and Shevchenko. So that was an absolutely huge fee at that time. And I think he became the first non-UEFA player, non-EU player to break that transfer record as well. So it's absolutely huge. And he came in as this absolutely incredible player, Argentinian maestro. People thinking he's going to be absolutely incredible. Dominated the Italian league, been absolutely amazing for Argentina. 28 million. He was just was a big flop. One of the few players Ferguson got completely wrong. 73 games, 11 goals, just completely undelivered for them. And I'm not sure why, but Chelsea agreed to take him on back in 2003 for 15 million. So United cut their losses, and he didn't do anything there. So to make it worse, he didn't just flop at United. He flopped at Chelsea as well. So he just couldn't adjust English football. Had a good career as he went on in his later years. I think he went back to Italy and then to Argentina and did quite well at Argentina, and carried on playing for the national team. But in England, he just wasn't suited to the league at all. And
No.
I think Chelsea, I think they played like 7 times at Chelsea. Then they loaned him out to Inter Milan, loaned him out to. He did quite well. I was sort of saying back in Italy, went back there, did okay for Inter Milan, went back to. I think he went back to Argentina in the end, and the top club out there, one of the top clubs at Estudiantes, I can't pronounce the name. He had a real good career there, and ended his career quite well in those leagues, but wasn't suited to the Premier League at all. Didn't do anything there, and is not remembered fondly by Chelsea or United just because he didn't do anything for the big fee. And I really don't understand why Chelsea ended up buying him from United after being a flop.
Mate, it was absolutely, like you say, 2 stints in at Premier League clubs, and he done nothing for either. That is one of the biggest flops ever at the time as well. That is huge money. 2001 for 28 million. That is criminal. That United paid that.
Definitely. But I still can't
Absolutely
believe
criminal.
that Chelsea paid 50 million 2 years after. It's like someone coming in for Shevchenko for 15 million. Yeah.
Yep. Oh,
I guess that's what goes. I guess the name of the player got everyone. I think he was still playing well for Argentina. So I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, if he plays well there, why not? But he just wasn't suited to the English league at all.
That's the thing. That is the thing, my friend. You got another one, Finch, or do you want me to crack on with?
You go with another one.
I'm going for another one. I'm going for another premise. It's not going to be Chelsea. We've had enough flops in this list. I am going to go for a player who was, honestly, at the time, considered one of the best in the Premier League. Arguably on par with Eden Hazard at this moment in time. And since then, it has just gone downhill. Downhill at the highest level.
Understatement, yeah.
Oh, yeah, understatement, mate. He was so good. Literally one of the best players in the world. And you think, I wanted this guy at Chelsea. I wanted him so bad at Chelsea to partner Eden Hazard. If he had him and Hazard and Diego Costa in one team, we would have won it all. Champions League, Premier League. We'd even won the bloody World Cup, man. We would have been unstoppable. I'm talking about Alexis Sanchez going to Manchester United. The biggest fall from grace ever. What happened to this guy? He had it all at Arsenal. He was their number one. He was their number one for assists, goals, man of the matches each game. He carried them on his back, and then he said, you know what? I don't want to play for you no more. This club's going nowhere. So you think, all right, that's fair enough. Where are you going to go? He looked destined to go to Man City under Pep Guardiola, because that's who Pep wanted. He wanted him so bad, and in the end, he went into a swap deal. It went to Manchester United, and United, in exchange, let Arsenal have Henrik Mkhitaryan, which didn't work out, but worked out a hell of a lot better than what Alexis Sanchez did to Man United. It was on something like 400 grand a week, Finch, and he scored about 3 goals for him.
Yeah.
One of the biggest downfalls ever. World-class player has gone to pot.
It did make sense at the time. The swap deal made complete sense. So Arsenal obviously wanted to get rid of Sanchez. It looked like he was going to go to City, but then United were offering more money. And at the time, he's out of contract in the summer. He obviously one of the best players in the Premier League, if on par with Hazard as the best probably at that point. Because I think he got 80 goals and 45 assists in 166 appearances at Arsenal. So they are incredible stats. And he was their main player, was incredible for the Champions League, incredible for them in all competitions, brought back a few FA Cups to them. He was there bringing back trophies for Arsenal after a long period of drought in terms of trophies. And it seemed like it worked well because Henrik Mkhitaryan had another year in his contract, but wasn't going well for him at United. It seemed like that swap deal probably weighed out quite well because although Mkhitaryan probably wasn't worth the same amount if they're both under contract as Sanchez was going to go for a free transfer that year, so it probably evened out. That did work quite well. And I was thinking, okay, good transfer for both parties. Sanchez seemed like the missing piece for United because United was second at that point to City, I think. They were really a
That's it.
second club. Mourinho was there. It seemed like they just needed one or two world-class players to really make them push on to challenge them and win the league. And he went there, massive thing when he went there. I remember all the clips about him coming to United number 7. It's an amazing player. Going to
Playing
bring
the piano.
Yeah, the piano. Oh God, that piano.
Oh, the piano.
I always
glory,
think, okay,
Man United.
God, it is going to return the glory days back to United because Sanchez was that level.
Exactly.
You'd think he could bring them to that level. He was that good. Like what Hazard did to Chelsea before, but he's basically on par with Hazard, or the closest player in the Premier League to him at that point. He's going to do it for that. £400,000, but God damn, he didn't do anything. He's almost a scam. He got that number 7 jersey. He get 5 goals and 45 appearances. It's almost like a competition winner. That's how much he played. That's what he played like. This wasn't the same player at all. It was just a massive because it wasn't like Shevchenko and players like that. They came from different leagues, so you sort of thinking, okay, they just didn't adjust. But with Sanchez, he's playing in the same league. Yeah, at his peak. Yeah, he went to United. What, 29 years old was he when he went there? So he was at his peak. 28. Yeah. So he's at his peak. He just didn't do it at all. And now United are going a completely different direction. He's still under contract there, which is quite incredible. They're going a completely different direction. I guess Inter Milan are probably going to end up having to try. Well, they will end up trying to buy him because he isn't done awful there. He hasn't set the world alight, but hasn't done awful. Actually scored for him today, the final game of the season for Inter Milan. But I don't think he'll ever be the same player. The thing is, he was absolutely incredible. Chile's talisman as well. Won the Copa America for Chile.
Yep.
Yeah.
Finch,
he won the Copa America twice for Chile. I remember him scoring this winning penalty to Panenka.
He was on par with Eden Hazard in the Premier League.
The thing is, he wasn't actually a striker and got 24 goals the year before he moved to United in the Premier League. It's absolutely incredible.
He was an amazing player. Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
Because that downfall just made no. We talked reasons before about Torres, about Shevchenko leagues, about Carroll. He never warranted the money, but Sanchez is just a mystery. What happened there? Because he just doesn't look the same player at all. That's maybe it's confidence. I really don't know, but he's potentially the biggest one. Potentially because of the money involved. Still the highest paid player in the league, probably. United
still playing. They've still got to pay half of his wages, surely.
Definitely. But yeah,
that was just absolute madness. That is a huge one. But this next one, I can't do them in the double. I'll do one each. This next two could be arguably the biggest flops of all time.
Oof,
my first pick is Ousmane Dembele to Barcelona from Borussia Dortmund back in 2017. This guy set the world alight at Dortmund, even though he didn't have the best stats at Dortmund in his season, where he was absolutely unbelievable. Jadon Sancho has hit double figures in both assists and goals, but no one's talking about him like he was, like that they were Dembele. Dembele, everyone was on everyone's lips. Dembele, everyone wanted him. And in the end, he chose Barcelona, but he actually only got, I think it was 7 goals and 8 assists, Finch? Something like that.
He didn't have great stats, and he got 6 goals in that year in Bundesliga. He was never, in my opinion, he's nowhere near the levels of Sancho.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But 116 million, I believe his transfer fee was, and he has not paid that back one single penny. One single penny. If it wasn't for Ousmane Dembele, I honestly believe Barcelona would have a Champions League again. He missed that huge opportunity against Liverpool to end the tie, and he completely fluffed it. He's been hit with injuries. He's not performed to his standards. He's been late for training. He's been up all night playing his PlayStation. Apparently, didn't he show up for pre-season training or post-lockdown training overweight or something like that?
Yeah, that was it.
He showed up late. The guy's attitude is not there. He does not warrant the price tag that Barcelona pays for him. If they do sell him, they're not going to make any money whatsoever. They'll probably lose a bunch. He's still only young. That's the only thing he's got going for him. He's still 24 24, I believe, 24
23,
years old, 23. Hopefully, he can turn it around. Me and Finch, we love football. We don't ever want to see players fail, but
except Will Keane. You want to see Will Keane fail, don't you?
oh, I hate that guy so much. But with Ousmane
He's probably a loyal
Dembele,
listener. He's probably watching every episode, waiting for his mention.
Oh my god. Yeah. Ousmane Dembele, man, what a flop. A big flop, and I hope he turns it round, but I can't see it happening anytime soon.
He's got plenty of time, but I think, like, some of the other people we talked about, it sort of made sense why they become flops. I think with Dembele, it does make sense why he has become a flop, because I don't think he ever wanted 120 million, what was it, 105 million up front, 40 million with add-ons. I don't think he ever warranted that amount. But the reason Barcelona paid it is because they had 200 million from Neymar, and everyone knew they had all this money. So Dortmund were saying, we're not going to give you Dembele cheap. We've only had him for a season. We know he's worth decent money. You're not going to get many players better than him at his age. And you have all this money, so we're going to hold you ransom. So that's sort of why I think Barcelona paid such big money, because actual fact, he's probably worth near 50 million based on his actual stats.
Based on them stats, yeah. And you think
probably worth closer to 50.
Dortmund sold Dembele, and then they bought in Jadon Sancho. That was an incredible bit of business from Dortmund.
Definitely.
Absolutely incredible.
I guess he is a massive flop because he hasn't warranted the transfer fee. But like we talked about some other players, his stats aren't awful at Barcelona. Like last year, 14 goals, 42 appearances. That's not awful. But this year, he's been injured most of the time. It's still got. He's not played. He hasn't played to the standard of a £100 million player, but he hasn't been absolutely atrocious. He's still been at a good standard, but he just doesn't look like he'll kick on.
He's still been decent, but for the transfer fee, Finch, he has not warranted that price tag at all.
And he's been very injury prone at Barcelona. Maybe that's because he hasn't had the attitude to really kick on and really get himself fit and go into the gym, build up some muscle, and really be match ready and do that extra preparation the best players do. Because he just seems to get injured quite often. Even February this year, he got a hamstring tear and was out for 6 months. Was expected to be out for 6 months, so he hasn't played since, has he? In the league or any of the games. So yeah, I do think maybe he's a player which just needs a change of scenery to kick on. I don't think it's going to happen for Barcelona. I think too many things are going wrong there. I think if he has a change of scenery, he might have a chance to kickstart his career again.
No. Well, do they need him when they've got this Ansu Fati? You think?
No.
I'm sure that Dembele was meant to be the next poster child for Barcelona, but now they've got this Ansu Fati. They brought him through. Do they really warrant Dembele still?
No, I just think maybe he's a similar situation to some player, say like Robin. Did okay at Real Madrid, but was never amazing. He changed the scenery, went to Bayern, had an absolutely incredible career. So maybe he should follow a similar path to that, because some of the time players just aren't suited to clubs. I know this is completely different levels, but David McGoldrick at Ipswich, unbelievable when he started off with, but got a lot of injuries, wasn't the best. Went to Sheffield United next year, changed the scenery, motivated again, different scenery, player of the year at Sheffield United in the Championship. Took them up to the Premier League. It's been unreal for them again.
Been amazing in the Premier League.
Yeah. Wait, people say lack of goals, but if you ask any Sheffield United fan, they won't mind the lack of goals from him because of his contribution to the team. Obviously, he scored a couple lately when he was fit. He's obviously been out for the rest of the season, last few games.
Scored against Chelsea.
Yeah, they scored 2 against Chelsea, didn't they? Those were his first 2 goals, weren't they? Yeah, so that kind of thing.
He's got a lot of assists, though. He's got quite a few assists.
He's got, but he's a playmaker. He's a playmaker striker. It's really odd. He drops back a lot to play it. That's David McGoldrick. I think Dembele just needs a change of scenery like that. I think it will do him the world of good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there is still hope for Dembele, but I feel like I have to label him a flop just for that price tag.
Definitely.
It's been 3 years now and he's not really kicked off since. I know he had a lot of injuries, not his fault, but just such a huge price tag. It's absolutely massive. That was a big big summer for the transfers. Obviously, with Neymar and Mbappe, there's huge money going on.
But you can sort of
did
see.
Not get a good. Yeah.
You can sort of see why he's a flop and how that happened, just because they had the money from Neymar, and that's that's where it went wrong, and that's where everything went wrong for Barcelona ever since selling Neymar. They didn't have a choice, obviously, but that's where it's all gone wrong. If they kept Neymar, probably would have won a Champions League again, because that trio, Neymar, Torres, Messi, unbelievable.
Unbeatable.
They
was unreal.
Imagine the task of him on Dembele replacing Neymar is absolutely huge. The pressure of that, because he was Neymar's replacement. So
20 years old to be told you're Neymar's replacement.
It's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure, mate. A lot of pressure. Another one who joined Barcelona in the January transfer window of that same season, Felipe Coutinho, for £146 million, or fees that are rising too. But I do believe they've already got them because Barca won the league that year. I'm not sure if there's a Champions League clause in his contract. So correct me if I'm wrong, Finch.
I think there's a couple more clauses. A couple more clauses for him to reach that fee.
He still costs at least 125 million.
Yeah.
This guy is a flop. They are not going to make. They're probably not even going to make half the money on Coutinho what they bought him for. The thing is, I know that Coutinho's got a lot of talent. He's shown it at Bayern Munich. He's even shown it in glimpses at Barca, but he's just, I don't know, there's something about him that it never kicked on. I don't know what it was. He had all the talent at Liverpool. He's shown it in the first few stages at Barcelona, a bit like Morata did at Chelsea. Even shown it for Bayern Munich at times, but it just hasn't worked out for him. Bayern Munich do not want to take him on loan or take him on a full-time basis. Barcelona don't want him back. He's stuck in limbo, and you got to think, if Barca don't want him, Bayern Munich don't want him, Liverpool don't want him back. I don't understand what's happened. Yeah, I don't understand what's happened there, Finch.
I just think with Coutinho, people probably expect him to go Barcelona. Maybe he was expected to replace Iniesta, but it's quite different to Iniesta. I do think the other players didn't warrant the fee. Liverpool were very good in haggling that fee, getting as much as they could. And he's probably a £60 million player, maybe £60 million player, but it was never. I don't think he's ever had the potential to reach the Ballon d'Or kind of level. That kind of fee, that is Ballon d'Or kind of level. You've got to have potential to win a Ballon d'Or if you're paying 120 to 140 million, really. And I don't think he ever had that potential. He had a level, and I think it's probably been close to that level for Barcelona. It hasn't been amazing. Probably been. No, it's definitely not warranted that fee, but he has a level where he can get to. I don't think he can go above that. I think his potential takes him so far. And I think first year at Barcelona, first half of the season, I think he got 10 goals and 22 appearances, which isn't too bad. He didn't play that badly. Had a few good games. Didn't perform £120 million player, but performed at similar levels to what he did at Liverpool at times. So and also at Liverpool, the team was built around him a lot of the time. Whereas at Barcelona, you have all the other stars you've got to fit in, and it didn't really suit him. So I thought at the time it's probably unjustified. The 120 million criticism of him is quite harsh as well, because the reason he did so well at Liverpool is because the team was built to suit him. Whereas at Barcelona, he's got to fit in, and he didn't do that as well. But you can still see the levels he's at, and he still performed at a good level. It's just if the team's not built around him, he's not going to be the star player. He's not going to get as many goals as he did at Liverpool, do as much with assists, be that absolutely focal point of the team, because Messi will always be that at Barcelona. He just didn't seem to fit in as well as was they hoped. And he's done okay for Bayern Munich also. And I just think it's just one of the players where probably people expected more of him than what he had, considering he's not the main player of the team. But I still think I wouldn't put him as a flop, because he has done played some good games, got some goals, performed at good levels for Bayern and for Barcelona. Just doesn't warrant the fee. But if you compare him to Dembele, for example, if you compare him to Carroll, if you compare him to Shevchenko, we're talking about people who maybe less so Dembele, but the others, they did very little. Very little. Sanchez did nothing. With Coutinho, especially that first half season at Barcelona, 10 goals, 22 appearances. Second season didn't do as well.
That's what I mean. He started off really well at
Mm.
Barcelona. He started off really well. And we were thinking, right, maybe he is going to crack on. He is going to up his game and become even more of a world-class player. But he just hasn't seemed to have done that, Finch. And if he's not going to do it now, he's never going to do it. He's 28, nearing on 29 years old. I just can't see it really happening again for him at this stage.
Yeah. I just think he's reached this level. I think he peaked at Liverpool, and I don't think he was ever going to go above that level where he reached at Liverpool, which is still a really good level, just outside of world class, outside the best players in the world. Maybe you can call it world class, depends on your definition. But I just don't think he was ever going to get above that level. So the best he can hope for is to reach that level again. And he's not too far off it. He's still performing at a very good level. So.
Oh, but that's what I mean. But that's why I call him. That's why I call him a flop, because he's doesn't warrant that price tag, and they're going to lose so much money on him. I can't not label him a flop.
Yeah, that's to do with so there's certain flops when you talk about, they to do with them playing well, playing not well. But I think it's similar. Maybe a bad comparison because Torres won some things, and he had two different careers, but similar kind of thing, because he cost that amount of money, and that the reason he's a flop is because of the money, and that's the only reason. If he cost 60 million,
if he cost under 100 million, I wouldn't name him a flop. If he cost 90 million, I'd say no, he's actually an all right player. The fact that he cost nearly 50 million more than that, I feel like I have to.
Yeah, and that's because of what Barcelona had, the money they had, Liverpool negotiating. It's the same. Exactly the same scenario as Dembele. Exactly the same.
Exactly. I think that's it.
I can't help you with that at the moment.
No, my Google is just talking to me. In touch.
Does she want to claim a flop?
Yeah, I think she had something in mind. She's a bit too shy though, so. Yeah.
Did you have any more, Finch, or did you want to?
I have a couple more, and I have one player. I have two players who I think potentially aren't the biggest flops ever.
Ooh.
Well, not ever, but we're talking like last 25 years in our date range. So firstly, player, this was a big surprise. Big surprise. Talk to any Newcastle fan, they'll be thinking, what the hell is going on here? Newcastle centre back was doing okay there. Didn't set the world alight. Had a huge. I don't want to say huge, but he had a really bad injury record. Absolutely awful injury record. Was injured half the time. But some reason, somehow, maybe a few people were drunk in Madrid on a night out, and they thought, who can we get? Let's phone up Newcastle. Let's phone up Freddie Shepherd at the time. Oh, we want your centre back. We want Jonathan Woodgate. And they're thinking, you want Mr. Injury prone. Yet they wanted him. He seemed like a promising player, but he was so injury prone that Madrid ended up paying 13.5 million for him, which baffled a lot of people back then. He was actually injured at the time of the transfer. His first year didn't even play. He was injured every single game. And then he eventually did make his debut. And this is probably the worst debut you'd ever hear about for a player. So he made his debut about a year into the transfer. So he didn't play for a whole year. And he scored an own goal. And then after scoring that own goal, was sent off, which is absolutely atrocious. And then so he had 3 years at Madrid, had just 14 appearances in those 3 years, and then went back to England. He was actually voted as the worst signing for Real Madrid in their 21st century by Marca, which is the main newspaper in Spain, the main football newspaper, which has all the football headlines. And he was voted as the worst signing of the 21st century for Real Madrid by that newspaper. So he definitely deserves a spot in this transfer flop list, because he was generally, I can't think of a worse debut as to that, and I can't think of a player who's moved somewhere, has been injured the whole year, and you buy a player injured as well. I thought it was absolutely crazy. It's absolutely
madness of a transfer. Newcastle must have been laughing.
And he went on loan to Middlesbrough after, and that was, I was counting his third year, still beat Madrid, but he was on loan at Middlesbrough. But ultimately, over 2 years, Real Madrid, 14 appearances, 1 goal. Didn't do amazing there at all. It's just a weird transfer. I just think, why would you buy a player injured? Why would you pay that amount amount of money for a player, and then have a player not play for you for a whole year because he was injured that whole year, and then when he makes a debut, he has that kind of debut. I just find it so weird. And then,
Absolutely mad.
yeah,
That is mental of a debut. That's probably like, honestly, that could be up there with the worst debut ever. That probably is the worst debut ever.
he got 37.1% of the votes in this poll, whether he was the worst signing of the 21st century for Real Madrid, and that was in 2007. So that shows the levels he's at. And the other player I want to mention is a player not many people talk about at all, and this is Denilson. He moved from Sao Paulo to Betis, and this is when Betis were challenging for La Liga. They were up there. Went for £21.5 million, which back in 1998, that was a world record fee. Huge amounts. And then we'll talk about equivalent now. Neymar fee. Absolutely massive. So went there. Great player for Sao Paulo. Had an amazing World Cup back in '98. Absolutely incredible World Cup. Brazil came second. He's played most of the games there, and I think the year before he was crucial in the Copa America when Brazil won the Copa America. Was one of the best players in that tournament. He went to Spain. Everyone thought going to be absolutely amazing. So he had a great World Cup in France. He was absolutely awful. Never fulfilled potential, and amazingly was there, I think, for 5 or 6 years. And in the end, he built up 186 appearances, got 13 goals. Was not really a goal scorer midfielder, but he was meant to be sort of box-to-box midfielder nonetheless. He actually went, I think the season after, he went to Betis. He spent 7 years there, which is quite crazy. Don't know how, I think it's because Betis just couldn't unload him. 7 years, a year after he went there, and they got relegated. So absolutely awful. And then he went on loan to Flamengo. And then he obviously went back to Betis when they got promoted again. And eventually left them in 2005, went to Bordeaux, which is never the same player, just didn't do anything really. But it's just amazingly, the season after he arrived there, they got relegated. So obviously the impact wasn't the best, considering they were challenging before at the higher end of the table. He didn't help them out too much. But to be a world record fee and then next year get relegated, that's unheard of almost. And considering how good he was, set the world alight at World Cup, he's got to be up there. World record fee, next season relegated. There's just crazy stuff. Imagine Neymar going to PSG and then PSG getting relegated.
Oh my
it's
God.
Just absolute madness. And he did play. It's crazy. He ended up playing 186 appearances for them, which when you think about is incredible. Yeah, because for a club,
that's mad actually.
But he couldn't keep up. They got relegated in 2000, so his sort of second year he was there, which was just absolutely awful. But then obviously, and in return, he went on loan when they were in the second division there.
Yeah.
And then when came back in 2001, when they obviously returned to La Liga, but still they didn't do amazing. I think that they qualified for the Champions League one of his last years, but he was just a fringe player at that point. Went to Bordeaux, didn't really do anything. Actually, in 1997, he got the Golden Ball for the best player of the Confederations Cup. It wasn't Copa America. I got it wrong. It was Copa America. He was incredible as well. He did win. They won it that year, 1997, and later in the summer they had the Confederations Cup, and he got the best player of the tournament. So you're thinking after that, what can go wrong? But a lot went wrong. He's got to be up there.
Do we have our list then, Finch? Do we have our?
I think we've got 2 players worth a quick mention as well. One player,
go for it.
Liverpool player. We've talked about Carroll, but we haven't talked about some signings Liverpool made, some awful signings before Klopp. Absolutely terrible signings. So they let go Xabi Alonso, which I thought was absolutely atrocious. He wanted to go, so fair enough, but replace him with someone of top quality. They bought Alberto Aquilani for 20 million. Rated as one of the best young players in the world. He had a real good reputation at Roma, really, really good. And came in to replace Xabi Alonso, an absolute legend, one of the best passers of the game. Best passers I've ever seen, ever.
Yep.
Absolutely incredible player. So Aquilani, you got a lot to live up to. Came in, got a lot of injuries. was never a great player. Only had 28 appearances, Liverpool in the end, 2 goals. That is absolutely atrocious. He went on loan to Juventus. I think is it AC Milan now? I know he's at AC Milan recently, but he never fulfilled. Yeah, I think he was at AC Milan last year, was it the year before? The last time I heard of him. No, that was a few years ago. Sorry, I'm talking years and years ago. He went to AC Milan, then went to Florentine.
I swear he retired.
Yeah, he's still playing, but he's playing the lower. I think he's. I don't know what's up with him, to be honest, but he was in Fiorentina for a few years, then went to Sporting, then went to a few lower league Serie A teams. He's most recently been at Las Palmas in Spain, and he hasn't played since. So maybe he has retired. I think actually he might have retired last year, but that shows what a sad return to his career, because at Roma he was meant to be the next best thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just hasn't worked out for him since. He's just been played for injuries.
Back in 2009, Finch, that was quite a big fee of 20 million. That was quite a high fee for a player. So he had a lot to live up to, especially replacing Xabi Alonso. And he just never did it. Never did it whatsoever.
Yeah, and the last one I want to talk about is a player who was quite famous at the time. A lot of people talked about him and some great stories. Bebe at Manchester United.
Oh, Bebe.
One of Alex Ferguson's probably one of his least successful moves. I didn't ever even watched him. It was a great story. I didn't even watch him ever. It was just a little tip off from Carlos Queiroz, Ferguson's old assistant. A little tip off from him saying it's good. They never saw him play. Bought him back in 2010 for 7.5 million, and he ended up playing just 2 games, 2 Premier League games for United, 7 in all competitions. I don't think Ferguson ever knew what to make of him, because he just sent him out on loan all the time. In the end, he was loaned to Benfica. Had an okay career in the lower leagues in Spain, but he's never lived up to what people talked about. I mean, when he came to United, people say, "Oh, he's absolutely incredible. He's the next best thing." People were saying compared to Ronaldo when he was at Sporting. He's ended up doing very little. Like I said, okay in the lower divisions in Spain, lower parts of La Liga. I think he spent a long time at Eibar, and then went to Rayo Vallecano. I think they're now in the 2nd division in Spain, so that's where he is at the moment. But yeah, never lived up to his potential. But I think is worth talking about, just because it's just a crazy story. United bought this player 7.5 million just based on a tip off. And
that is mental. They never even watched him.
Never watched him. Just bought him on a tip off. Went there. I think the story goes they could have got him for like £300,000 a month before, but then he signed a new contract or something. He had like a clause in his contract like a month before. He signed a new contract, and he had to ended up having to pay over 7 million more than that original fee. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, worth mentioning. Won't be the biggest flop.
Oh, without a doubt.
Definitely a flop and an odd move. Definitely odd.
Yeah, that's a mental one, Finch.
So I think we've talked about players like Andy Carroll, Shevchenko. We talked about Torres and got rid of that tag of a flop to him. It's worth talking about Torres, because he's no flop. Big X to that.
Yeah.
We talked about Woodgate. We talked about Denilson. We've talked about the biggest flops out there. We've talked about Sanchez, but who is that? Who is the biggest flop in recent history? We've got to consider money. Money's a big one. We've got to consider how well they played. The 2 things you've got to consider: how well they played and money. And then the third thing, was there any circumstances which meant they couldn't play to the best of their ability? We talked about players like Torres, why he's not a flop, because he came to Chelsea a different player. That was the reason. He did amazing at Chelsea as well, but he came there. The reason he didn't perform to the level he was at Liverpool is because he was a different player because of the injury. But that's the other thing we would consider. Was there any circumstances which meant they were always going to be a flop? So we've got to decide from that. As I'm leaning to, I know money-wise, Coutinho and Dembele, absolutely huge money, didn't warrant it. But the reason they were a flop, in my opinion, is because they never warranted the money in the first place. They were just Barcelona just overpaid. I'm leaning at the moment to Sanchez, just because how good he was at that time, how much money United paid for him. in terms of wages. Obviously, we've got a free transfer swap deal going on, so no
Yep.
money in terms of the transfer fee. But in terms of wages, you're talking 400 grand a week, 500 grand a week. That builds up.
That's a
So
lot.
we've got 52
That's
weeks
a
in the
lot
year.
of money.
400k times 52. Do the maths. Crazy amounts.
That's like 25 million, isn't it?
Crazy amounts of money. So
probably more, probably even more than that. But yeah, it's got to be more than that, surely.
So we've got Sanchez there. We've got Woodgate. How can you even buy a player who's injured? Bought a player injured the whole season. Second year, sent off, own goal, first game. Career's already over at that point in terms of his Real Madrid career. Did okay later on. Went back to Borough, won a League Cup with Spurs, but we're talking just at Real Madrid. Absolute flop. Then we go to Denilson. Denilson, not many people talk about Denilson anymore. World record transfer. World record. Went to Betis. They got relegated within a year of him being there. And he was a world record transfer. Absolutely awful. Shevchenko, biggest British transfer at that time. One of the best players in the world. But was there a reason? Maybe his mentality after that Liverpool game. Maybe that's the reason. What are you thinking?
Honestly, I'm leaning towards Kaká. I'm leaning either to. I've got three in mind. I've either got Shevchenko, Alexis Sanchez, or Kaká. All three were world class before these big moves. Kaká, I believe, was the best of the best. He was a Ballon d'Or winner, 2 years prior to this move, Finch. He was absolutely fantastic. Best in his position, top three in the world alongside Messi and Ronaldo, and he got to play with Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid. He, moved for 56 million. It just did not work out whatsoever. He completely changed the player. Obviously, he had that injury. But even when he first started playing, he didn't really do much. He didn't really do much at Real Madrid.
Yeah, but I guess with Kaká, you got to look.
Considering what he was at Milan.
Yeah, but I guess with Kaká, his stats weren't awful. Like 23 goals, 85 appearances. Not awful. He did make some contribution there. It's some contribution. But I was talking about other players who made Sanchez no contribution at all. And Kaká, it does sort of make sense why second and third year, well, third, fourth, fifth year. But, right, what am I talking about? First year, he got to play in the third position. But it makes sense in his second, third, and fourth year why he didn't perform, because Ozil was playing in his preferred position.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm a bit more hesitant. Kaká was definitely a flop, but I'm a bit more hesitant to call him the biggest flop, because you're not playing your prime position in the most of your career at that club. And also, if you are scoring a few goals when you do play, maybe you're nowhere near the levels you were previously, but if you are making a contribution, you can call him the biggest flop, because at least he did something. We look at Sanchez. He hardly got any goals, hardly made any contribution, he was playing his preferred position, was given the number 7 shirt, was meant to be the heir.
Playing left wing and up striker.
But they played him in his preferred position. He was getting the game time, but he just never seemed to kick on. He got 5 goals in 44 appearances, just not good enough at all. Whereas you look at Kaká, at least first year Kaká got more goals than he got 9 goals in 33 appearances. That's more goals than Sanchez has got overall in 2 years at United.
I guess that is a fair point. I guess that is another point, yeah. I do.
And there's no reason.
Still my favourite.
Yeah. The thing is, there's reasons behind Kaká as well. What we said, preferred position, line like being Ronaldo, the team's not built for him. Still should have performed better based on the transfer fee and based on the status and how good he was, the best of the best at Milan. But there's less reasons with Sanchez, because he went to a team where they were making him the star man. He was the star man at United going in there.
Exactly.
Just baffles me though.
And he didn't get any. I can't even remember Sanchez picking up any injuries, like big injuries either.
No, not at all.
So I guess Shevchenko got that going for him.
That's why I think Kaká. Let's put him out the running. What do you think?
Let's take Kaká out. Sorry, my man Kaká, you're still my favourite player ever, but you're out. Shevchenko. This is a tough one as well, because he had so much potential. There was so much hype around him coming, and he just again did not deliver whatsoever.
So him and Sanchez is very close because, again, he was just hyped up so much, and rightly so, because he was probably very similar levels. Him and Sanchez probably similar levels. Coming in, Shevchenko, one of the best strikers in the world. Sanchez, if not the equivalent, definitely top 3 players in the Premier League. If he wasn't on par with Hazard already as the best player, he's definitely top 3, definitely top 2, definitely the second best player if he wasn't on par with Hazard.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're very similar levels, and they came in with such high expectations, rightly so. And both probably had similar impacts, and both didn't do much at all. Probably Shevchenko scored a few more goals, but the actual impact is very, very similar. So it's difficult to separate them.
I'm going to base it on that. I'm going to say Sanchez, because at least Shevchenko had to come to a different league. Serie A is much different to Premier League. It's a lot quicker, the Premier League, than Serie A. There's a lot more physicality. But Sanchez has played in the Premier League. That's where he comes from, to go to Man United. He was already killing it. And the fact that he stopped killing it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. It fulfills that 3 criteria I talked about. I talked about transfer fee, but with Sanchez, we have the wage fee, the wages. The wages were absolutely huge.
Huge wage fee.
Yeah, huge. The biggest wage package of any player in the Premier League. He's the highest paid player in the Premier League. Still may not probably pay over half that amount. And they don't even have him to play at the moment, just because that's the only way they could loan him out. If it fills the second criteria of the impact on the pitch, didn't do anything.
No.
The third criteria of, is there any reason that he didn't play? Well, no. He was given a platform, given number 7 shirt, given the playing time, given his preferred position, playing in the same league. There was no real reason. He fulfills all that criteria to be a flop. I think it's got to be the biggest flop. What do you think?
Mate, I completely agree. Sanchez, the biggest transfer flop in the last 25 years, probably of all time, if I'm being honest.
That's it then. Alexis,
there we have it.
Biggest flop the last 25 years. Another podcast done. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening.
See you next week.